Well, that intro is supposed to be a little better than it is. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. I'm excited about. We're going to start doing these on Monday evenings, and obviously it'll be recorded, so you can watch it at a later time if that works out better for you. But what I want to do with this time is just what we're calling this Dr. Kim's Heart to Heart. I want to be able to answer your questions. I want to talk about some subjects that are probably interesting to you, and I think maybe some of the struggles you're having in your marriage. Talk about all different kind of topics. We'll have where you can ask questions, all kinds of things like that. So I'm excited to do this. I hope it's beneficial for you because I want this to be for you guys. I don't get a chance to just do this without a lot of structure and just where people can ask questions and we can interact on it and try to help, try to add some help. Tonight, we're going to start with a subject that's pretty tough, but it's something that I see a lot. I see it in almost every marriage. I'm going to move the camera a little bit. I see it in almost every marriage, and that is the topic of pornography. Um, sometimes you might say, people say, how many people watch pornography? Well, the number continues to rise. 61% of the general population reports viewing pornography. I mean, 61%. So, and 78% of men watch pornography. So, like if you're sitting in church, there's 5 guys, only one of them's not watching pornography. 44% of women watch pornography. Teens, 73% of teens have consumed pornography at one time or another. Wow, that's just a lot. We look at the scripture to see kind of what it says about it. There's a scripture that says, for us as marriage people, when we get married, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they become one. And so pornography, not only what it does to us emotionally, what it does to our spouse, but it really, if it God gave us a great plan, and we just don't do well all the time. Intimacy and trust are just really the bedrock of a strong marriage, aren't they? But in today's digital world that we have, things can be very, very different. All right. Um, Sorry, I had a little bit of trouble there with my keyboard. Sorry about that. So pornography is everywhere. Certainly that it leads, well, it is infidelity, and it leads sometimes into affair. So this whole widespread access of the screen has created new challenges for couples that are trying to maintain healthy boundaries. They're trying to maintain trust. There's a scripture that I think kind of for me has summed it up. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. What does that mean? Well, when I guard my heart, I'm not letting things in that are going to be detrimental to me, things that are going to be bad for my marriage. I'm blocking those things out and not letting the other things in because they do. So if I let in pornography, if I let in things that aren't healthy for my marriage, that's going to affect the way my marriage goes. That's going to affect the way I lead my life. And so we want to guard our hearts. It's such an important thing. So I want to go into 3 crucial areas the couples face. All of these are come out as some questions that you guys have asked. The first one is about overcoming pornography. How can my husband overcome pornography? The Bible tells us to flee from sexual immorality. So it's not like God knew we weren't going to have trouble with things. Obviously, there was not back then the pornography how we have it today. I mean, even from when I've grown up, when my kids grew up, to my grandkids, it has changed. With access, the so much of it out there is, and so I think what God says, don't do things like that. They're going to affect us. I talked to a guy the other day, and he was talking about some porn he had viewed when he was 13 years old, and now he was in his 40s, and he said those images sometimes come back now to haunt him because he's in a healthy marriage, but that kind of thing is something he's grappling with. So, what do you do? What are some things you can do if you want to help someone overcome porn or kind of guide them? Well, I think professional counseling, support groups, those kind. We have some people that we work with, Restored with Matt Klein. Matt has become a good friend. He's just kind of an expert in this field. On awesomemarriage.com, Where our courses are, Awesome Marriage University, Matt has done a course on overcoming porn for us. It's powerful. We've had so many people go through it and seeing great results. You need things that like Covenant Eyes, you need blockers, you need things like that that are going to be on your devices to help take away that temptation. Pure Desire is another ministry that works within the churches. They do a great job just really getting to know more about all the great work that they do. So get some help, somebody that's been through it, somebody who's helped others through it. That'll be a great first step. And a lot of that you can do online, okay? Developing healthy intimacy in your marriage. Now, that's going to take time because of the hurt that your spouse has gone through. And so you want to stay at her level as you begin to do that. And what that's going to be very important so that you don't try to push or anything like that, but you want that intimacy. And I think, you know, as I wrote in my book, Love, Sex, Intimacy in the second half, we talk a lot about there of intimacy besides sexual. So there's a lot of ways you can have emotional intimacy. And so that's probably something you really want to work on if porn has been a problem. You want to work on intellectual intimacy. You kind of things to read or grow together, experiential intimacy. You can go do things together. And there's a lot of non-sexual touching that if your spouse is okay with, you can do. Because sometimes we get married, we quit doing those things like holding hands and putting your arm around each other and cuddling and those kind of things. And so those are very important. The other thing that's really important is to understand and address any personal triggers. In other words, for you, what triggered you in the past to go look at porn. For your spouse, things that would trigger her, like if she's worrying about you going to porn. I've had a lot of people that say, you know, after my husband, he's doing the right things, he's away from porn, but every time I see him on his phone when I'm not around and I happen to walk in, the first thing that happens to me is that he's looking at porn. And so he isn't. So those triggers are important to know so you can deal with them, acknowledge them, how to work through them. And for guys, you know the things that trigger you. And so it's learning to replace something else in that place where you would usually turn to porn in the past. We mentioned the accountability software, safeguards, those kind of things. That's real important. Building new habits and coping strategies, kind of piggybacking off what we just talked about of how to not give in to porn anymore. And so that's something that I think a support group that you could find online with Matt Klein's group with Restored, where you can find other places where you can be with other men that are struggling with this and see what they're doing that's helping them and some accountability in there. I don't think you can get away from porn without accountability. So you got to find someone that will meet with you, that will ask you the tough questions every week, that loves you enough to get in your face if he needs to get in your face. Those kind of things. Accountability partner is so important, and I think that gives your spouse a lot of security, and she cannot be your accountability partner. Commitment to complete honesty and transparency. That is really a really important one too, because you've got to be honest. You've got to be transparent. That means your spouse has to have all your passwords. You know, the things that went on and that she knew when you were accessing porn, you've got to help her know that you're not doing that in those situations. And so all that stuff is very, very, very important. So let's, I think that kind of covers the things I want to do is to answer that question. How do you help your spouse, or what can your spouse do? And I think what a spouse can do, you can encourage your husband to get help. But it's up to him. He's the one that's going to have to take those steps. He's going to want to have that commitment and not, hopefully that his faith strengthens through this, because not only do you need an accountability partner, you need God in this with you. You need God to help you resist temptation and to have options that are other than looking at pornography as you go forward in the future. Okay, so let's talk about how do I feel safe after finding my husband is a regular porn user. That's tough. It's really tough. I think one of the things that are going to help you feel safe is boundaries. Now, what are boundaries? Most of us know, but I'm not sure, you know, when I talked about, I'm not sure we really understand that much what boundaries really are. So boundaries are to keep the person who's setting them safe. It's not to punish the other person. It's not to make the other person feel bad or guilty or shameful. It's what do you need this boundary? Like if you're standing in the middle of your yard and you build fence all around you, that fence is a boundary that helps you feel safe in your yard because nobody else can come around the fence. Okay, so those are something that's very important, and I think in that it's something that as a spouse you need to think through. Counseling will help that. What boundaries do you need in place, and then the husband to make sure that he is honoring those boundaries and also putting boundaries in place for himself with other things that would cause him trouble. If he's hanging around a bunch of friends that were into porn, they can't be there anymore. So he's got to put a boundary around himself and not let those guys continue to come in. Complete transparency is going to be important, just in your devices, your accounts, your schedule. That's something Nancy and I have really always done, just more out of respect for each other. I always wanted to know her to know where I was. She wanted to know where she was, what our schedules were, all those kind of things. Our devices have always been open to each other. She knows my password. My grandkids know my password. Almost everybody I know knows my password. So it's just coming to that point. And I know some people, you kind of hold on to that. You got to let go of it. You just got to let go of it. Regular emotional check-ins. I think those as a couple, how do you do them? We have a great tool at Awesome Marriage. It's called a weekly check-in. And it comes just a few simple questions, but couples who do that each week gives you a chance to kind of take the barometer, what's going on this week. It's also for some as guys that have trouble connecting emotionally, it's a way for us to begin to do that. So another thing that's really going to be important are what are your guidelines going to be about opposite sex friendships? Okay, this is countercultural, but I believe you should not be friends on Facebook or any social media with an ex-girlfriend. You just shouldn't. It's just I've seen too many things go wrong in that situation. So you want to stay away from that. You want to have, say you work with people. So instead, you just stay away, put boundaries. If you go to lunch, make sure there's another guy with you. Those kind of things that just so your spouse feels safe. I had a guy, and we kind of set that up. And so he had told his wife he does a lot of business lunches, sometimes with women. And so his deal was he would always have someone else with him, another man with him, or it could be another woman, I guess, in that situation. And so one time, a guy was supposed to meet him there. He was there. The lady, so he picks out his phone. He says, "Honey, I wanted to let you know that I'm having dinner with Mary, and Joe was supposed to be with us. He's not there, but we're going to have lunch and have our meeting." So she knew. She didn't hear it from somebody that saw him at the restaurant and said, "Oh, I saw your husband with some woman." No, you want to avoid those kind of things. Professional support and marriage counseling. With infidelity, I think you have to have help. And I think the same thing about porn. Your spouse, your wife needs the support. She needs to know how to get healthy, how to set boundaries, do those things. You need help in staying away from porn and how to get that where it's something in your past, not in your present, and certainly won't haunt your future. And then patience with the healing process. I think that's really important because the healing process takes time, and it's like you can't. And I've had people that say, "How long do I have to keep being accountable to my wife?" And I tell them that the rest of your life, really, because if you're really being care about making your wife feel secure, that's just something that's going to be a natural habit. She's going to know where you are. She's going to know your passwords, all those kind of things. And that becomes your new habit, your new way of life, your new normal is being totally transparent all the time with your spouse. So set your sights on things above, not on things that are on the earth. Okay, so let's look at managing screens in marriage. Here's the question that we got. Screens are a huge issue in our marriage. I feel like my husband is always on a screen of some kind, and it really frustrates me. Also makes me feel insecure because he has looked at porn in the past. So I'm constantly wondering if that's what he's doing now on the screens. How can we get on the same page about screens? That's something that's essential. I mean, it's got to happen. So let's look at some ways of doing that. One thing I want you should do is establish screen-free zones like your bedroom, dining room, places that screens just aren't there. In fact, if you're with your spouse, while you're on a screen, talk to your spouse, cuddle together, spend time together. Um, don't leave that doubt is because you've got a screen in front of you and your spouse is wondering, what are you doing? What are you looking at? Another thing that I think is really important is to set specific times for undistracted couple connection. I believe you have to do that every day. I think you've got to set aside 10 to 15 minutes every day, no distractions, just you and your spouse. How's your day? What's going on? What's one good thing that happened in your day today? Was there anything bad that happened in your day today? Did you see God acting in the world today? Just simple things. At Awesome Marriage, we have these questions you can ask your spouse. We have 3 sets of them. You can go into Awesome Marriage, any donation, and you can get that. But that helps people kind of jump start if you don't really know where to start. Develop shared agreements about how you're going to do um, your devices. In other words, what happens? I've had Christina on our Awesome Marriage team. She and her husband did this. They've been doing it quite a few years now. When everybody gets home, phones are docked, and they have this time that everybody's away from phones. I like to do that in the evenings when Nancy and I always, when I get home, now that we don't have kids in the house, we had kids in the house, find that 15 minutes was usually after they went to bed or early in the morning. And that didn't always work. I'm a morning person. Nancy isn't, but we could always stay up 15 minutes later after the kids went to bed, or as they got older, close their door, have that time while they're doing their homework. But find that time and hold that time sacred. So setting undistracted time, 10 to 15 minutes every day, I think that's going to be real important for you. And just, I think as you get in the habit of that, you're going to look forward to it. I mean, on my way home every day, I look forward to sitting down with Nancy when I first get home, talking through our days. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I texted her about 4 in the afternoon. I said, make sure that you're ready for him to come home, because some things that happened that day that I really needed her to help me process, not, and so she just was on alert, came home. First thing we just sat down, she helped me talk through it and just really didn't fix anything. It was just having her listen to me that made it so special. Practice open communication about your concerns. Sometimes we hold things in. Sometimes we think, well, things are going pretty good, so I'm not going to say anything. That's one thing that's good about our weekly couple checkup, because it gives you a chance to address anything, because you don't want to let those things pile up. You want to keep what I call short accounts. Something comes up as a problem, whether it's the two of you together, whether it's you, whether it's your spouse, but you keep short accounts and you talk about it and you resolve it as quickly as you can. And if you can't, you go to a counselor and let them help you do that. Use technology to enhance rather than hinder your relationship. You can have a lot of fun with technology. Nancy and I send texts, we send emojis, we send all kinds of things to each other. A lot of times at night, we'll lay in bed and we'll watch funny videos on something. And so we use things like that. We use technology to access the Bible app. And we do our Bible reading through that, and we have reading plans that we do. We access through technology the Bible Project, and we are going through the Bible this year with the Bible Project Bible in a Year plan. It's got some great videos, it's got some great insights. I learned, I went to seminary. I have learned so much from the Bible projects in the last couple of years that we've been aware of it and been using it on a daily basis. It's amazing. So use technology to enhance rather than hinder your relationship. Build trust through transparency and accountability. We've kind of talked about that. You just got to be totally honest. You got to be totally transparent. You don't want to leave any room for any kind of doubts. And I think too, just a scripture that I think really helps. It's one that I've loved for a long time, Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Romans 8:28. Just a powerful verse. So while these challenges that we've talked about today can seem overwhelming, thank you for those 3 women that sent those questions. There's always hope for healing and restoration in your marriage. You want to start with small steps. Maybe tonight you set aside the screens. Maybe you have an honest conversation with your spouse about how you can support each other. And just remember, you're not alone in this journey. With God's help, commitment to each other, your marriage can go stronger through these challenges. And I've had couple after couple that have been in the midst of some time of some form of infidelity that did a lot of the things we talked about, along with the counseling and accountability. And a year or two later, we'll say, that's the worst thing that ever happened in our marriage. But I would not change it because of where we are now. That can be your story also. We've talked a lot about things with Awesome Marriage. It's easy. AwesomeMarriage.com will get you everywhere to all our resources, to Awesome Marriage University, to our podcast, to our videos, all kinds of things have links there. Do you have a YouTube channel, which you're watching right now? I guess you know about that. I'm on in Awesome Marriage and myself. We're on Instagram or on Facebook. We're all over the place, trying to help people know God's plans for marriage. And so, um, hope you enjoyed this today. Next week, I think we're going to talk about conflict and how to resolve it, how to keep that from being something that pushes you guys apart. Because if you don't learn how to resolve conflict, it's going to do that. I tell couples in premarital counseling, one of the best gifts you can give your marriage is to learn to resolve conflict. And we'll talk some about communication in different weeks. And we'll talk about the topics you guys have. Just email me at drkim@awesomemarriage.com. I would love to put your questions here or answer them personally. Thank you for joining us on our first show right now. And we'll be back next Monday at this same time. And Dr. Kim's Heart to Heart, real talk for real marriage. Thanks for joining me.